There are many religions and cultures around the world with strong beliefs, customs, and ways of life. But sometimes those beliefs can clash with modern medicine in ways that can have heartbreaking consequences. In today's video, I'm sharing two real-life stories about children from Rastafarian families. There's nothing wrong with living according to your faith, but in these cases, that choice collided with medical advice with devastating consequences. One of these tragedies would go on to lead new recommendations and guidelines for social services and the government to protect seriously ill children. These are difficult but important stories to tell. These are the stories of 9-year-old Nahkira Harris, and the other story is of 6-month-old Baby Bubu Case. Nahkira Harris, born on the 8th of June 1982 to parents Dwight Harris and Beverly, who were said to be very loving and caring parents, if not a little overprotective. She had 4 other siblings who she lived with on Francis Street in Radford in Nottingham, and she attended Elms Primary School on Cramner Street, Nottingham. She was said to love dancing and baking. On the 18th of December 1991, 9-year-old Nahkira Harris was taken to her GP, Dr. Mary Phillips, after a period of illness. After a test, the doctor diagnosed that Nahkira was suffering from diabetes and recommended treatment. Nahkira was rushed to the Queen Medical Centre in Nottingham, where it was again recommended that she be given insulin to treat her diabetes. But the family, who were Ethiopian Orthodox Rastas and followed the Rastafarian teachings, which said that they were forbidden from consuming anything that wasn't natural, including medicines. They were also forbidden from having blood transfusions, and they also followed a strict vegan diet, not consuming anything from an animal, especially a pig, which was seen as unclean. The hospital told Nahkira's parents that without insulin she would die, and that it should be started within 12 to 14 hours. But Nahkira's parents, Dwight and Beverly Harris, were concerned about what was in the injection their daughter would be getting, as they were concerned because she was a sensitive child who suffered from allergies and had had bronchitis. The parents asked for more information about insulin and its possible side effects, and if there was a natural alternative. They also reiterated the fact that due to their religious beliefs, they didn't want insulin if it came from animals, at which they were told that insulin was not from animals, it was from a natural synthetic. Nahkira's father, Dwight Harris, then asked the nurse, Eleanor Hickey, which organs were affected by diabetes, to which he was told that it was the pancreas, and he said he'd have to go home and study more information about the pancreas. The parents of 9-year-old Nahkira Harris continued to ask the medical staff more questions, including if Nahkira could be tested first to see if insulin would agree with her because of her allergies. All these questions were asked to nurse Eleanor Hickey and a junior doctor who could not answer all their questions about insulin, so Nahkira's parents asked to speak with a senior consultant, and the medical staff recommended that they speak with Dr. Stephanie Ann Smith, the paediatric registrar. But the registrar was either not available or, according to some reports, refused to see them. Nahkira's mother, Beverly, said, "The fact that we asked so many pointed questions about diabetes seemed to trigger off a negative reaction. They were thinking that we were trying to refuse our daughter medical care, but we wasn't. All we wanted was to hear the facts about taking insulin. We had heard that there was quite a number of side effects, and Nahkira was a very sensitive child. We felt that as concerned parents, it was our duty to ask questions about any treatment she would receive. We had no qualms about her taking insulin. After the registrar refused to see the parents of Nahkira to discuss the diabetes and treatment with them, Nahkira's father, Dwight, cried and said, "They don't care about our child." At that moment, they felt that the hospital had turned their backs on them. Nahkira's dad, Dwight, even suggested that he would take Nahkira to Africa to find a tribal herbal remedy, and that he would prefer to bring her to a faith healer. Dr. Shirley Ann Derrick, who by that time was on her 32nd hour on duty, so was probably exhausted, as well as frustrated by what the hospital probably perceived as a difficult family, entered the cubicle and told the family, "Without insulin, Nahkira will die." Cruelly and unethically, Dr. Shirley Ann Derrick had uttered these words in front of 9-year-old Nahkira, who had been laying in the hospital bed. And when Nahkira heard this, she jumped up in the bed in shock, and tears began to well in her eyes. Angry at this unprofessional outburst and the refusal of the registrar to come and talk to them about medication that Nahkira would probably have to be injected with for the rest of her life, and feeling like no one in the hospital was giving them enough information about Nahkira's illness, and the fact that the family probably felt that their cultural and religious beliefs were not being given any consideration, the family grew frustrated and asked if they could see and speak with another consultant, and they were told that they could have a later appointment for later on that day to see a Dr. Derrick Johnson, a consultant in charge of the pediatric team. So they took Nahkira home to give her something to eat. By then it was 4:30 p.m. and they were told to return back to the hospital for 8 p.m. But when Nahkira's parents returned at 8 p.m, Nahkira was not with them, probably because they believed that they were there to discuss Nahkira's treatment with a specialist doctor, and the parents of Nahkira also said that before they'd left to go home earlier, they were told Nahkira would get seriously ill, but were not told by any of the medical staff when or what the symptoms would be. And seeing as the family had no prior knowledge or experience of diabetes, they were unaware at just how serious untreated diabetes could be. This was made more apparent to the family when they realized that no appointment had been made to see any consultant, despite being told earlier to come back later to discuss Nahkira's treatment with the consultant. Nahkira's parents had also arrived over an hour late for the appointment, but had phoned ahead to tell the hospital that they were running late, so the hospital knew that they were still coming. Yet despite all this, when they arrived, there was no appointment that had been booked with the senior consultant. Feeling disillusioned and abandoned by the hospital, Nahkira's parents left the hospital. Consultant Dr. Derrick Johnson, the consultant who Nahkira and her parents had the supposed appointment booked to see, that wasn't really booked on the day they were told to come back to the hospital at 8 p.m. on the evening of the 18th of December, heard about Nahkira's case and asked community diabetic nurse Margaret Hoskin to contact Nahkira's family. And 2 days later, on the 20th of December 1991, community diabetic nurse Margaret Hoskin went to the Harris's family home. She knocked the door, and when she received no response, social services were called. A young and inexperienced social worker called Parminda Saw was sent to visit the Harris's family, but she also got no response when she knocked the door. So she posted a note through the family's letterbox, which read, "Hello, I'm a black social worker and I work at Queen's Medical Centre. I was asked to get involved because I am also black. Although I am Asian, I do understand and face racism. We all do as black people. I understand why you are angry with the hospital." Unbeknown to the hospital or social services, the Harris family had just lost their business, and so money was low, and due to this, their electricity had been cut off. So that's the reason why they couldn't be reached at home, as they were now staying with friends. When the family finally received the letter that the social worker had posted through their letterbox, they were confused. 3 days later, Nahkira's parents brought her back to their GP, Dr. Mary Phillips, to ask for another hospital appointment for Nahkira, but asked that it not be with Dr. Derek Johnson, the consultant who they had come back to the hospital to see, but was told that no appointment had been booked, even though they'd been told to come back. Their GP, Dr. Mary Phillips, told Nahkira's parents that she couldn't interfere with choice of doctors, and so no appointment was made for Nahkira. Frustrated with the medical profession, Nahkira's parents decided to take their daughter's healthcare into their own hands and decided to go down the alternative medicine route, which lined up with their religious beliefs. The family said that at no point was it made clear to them the urgency of need for immediate treatment for Nahkira, so they didn't know at the time that they were in a life or death situation. And after knocking the Harris family door and getting no response, and only searching for Nahkira for 5 hours, some reports say for 3 days, social services decided to close the case. Over a month later, on the 29th of January 1992, Nahkira's parents, Dwight and Beverly Harris, found and contacted homeopathic Dr. Christopher Hammond and arranged for Nahkira to be seen by that doctor 2 days later, on the 31st of January 1992. But the next day, on January the 30th, 1992, Nahkira's parents phoned the homeopathic doctor, Dr. Christopher Hammond, saying that Nahkira was becoming delirious. So over the phone, Dr. Hammond prescribed a natural chemical called phosphorus. But by 10 a.m. the next morning, Dwight and Beverly brought 9-year-old Nahkira into the homeopathic doctor's surgery in a comatose state. It was said that Nahkira had lost a third of her weight, something which the family would later deny. Yet despite the state Nahkira was in, no effort was made to take her to the hospital or to call an ambulance. Instead, Dr. Christopher Hammond sat reasoning with Nahkira's parents for over an hour and a half. Dr. Christopher Hammond would later go on to say that when he saw Nahkira in a state of coma, he was shocked about her condition and frightened about the position he was in. He said that he was scared about Nahkira's parents' reaction if he insisted that she went to the hospital. So instead of calling for an ambulance for the comatose child, he took notes instead, whilst assessing the parents and their reaction and the atmosphere, all whilst questioning himself that at what point should he dare to introduce the subject of insulin without them walking out the door. So instead, he sat with Nahkira's parents for almost 2 hours, discussing possible herbal and homeopathic remedies. All the while, 9-year-old Nahkira lay in the doctor's surgery in a comatose state. After almost 2 hours, it was finally decided to take Nahkira to the hospital, where she reached at 1 p.m, almost 3 hours after being taken to the doctor in a coma. Upon arrival at the hospital, Nahkira's blood pressure was so low that it could not be measured. Doctors claimed that upon arrival, she looked emaciated and she was so dehydrated that she was given 2 liters of fluid immediately, a lot for a 9-year-old child. Nahkira was then taken to intensive care. Nurse Fiona Simpson, the sister in charge of children's intensive care, said that she was given a syringe with insulin in, at which Nahkira's dad, Dwight, told her, "We are vegans. We can't have pork or beef." Nahkira was then to be given a blood transfusion, but her father, Dwight, refused this, saying, "We are Ethiopian Orthodox and not allowed nothing that's not natural." Nahkira has never ever had any medication before, not even aspirin. Nahkira's father also said that he refused the blood transfusion because he was scared that she'd get HIV from it. So a second blood count was then done on Nahkira, which determined that she did not need an emergency blood transfusion after all. Nahkira was then intubated, and a consultant asked her father, Dwight, if he realised his daughter was extremely ill and could die, at which point Dwight said, "Don't say that word in front of her. It could shock her into it. Hearing is the last thing to go." Nahkira stopped breathing, and the medical team began resuscitating her, but there was nothing more they could do. At 4:35 p.m. on Friday the 31st of January 1992, 9-year-old Nahkira Harris was pronounced dead. Upon hearing that his daughter was dead, her father Dwight was so distraught he accused the medical staff of killing his daughter by putting a tube down her throat to help her breathe, saying, "She was breathing well on her own before you intubated her." He then accused the medical staff of poisoning her, saying that the drugs they'd given her had caused her to go into shock, and claimed that she wasn't really dead, she was just in shock. And in his distraught mental state, Dwight refused to accept his daughter was gone and began pleading with the medical team to keep on resuscitating her. But the medical team told him that it wouldn't do any good. Nahkira was gone. Still in his distraught and frantic state, Nahkira's father Dwight took over and began giving his 9-year-old daughter Nahkira heart massage. He gave her heart massage for 45 straight minutes, and even then he still couldn't accept that she was dead, saying that in the Bible Lazarus came back from the dead after 4 days. Nahkira's parents, Dwight and Beverly Harris, were arrested and charged with the manslaughter of their 9-year-old daughter and child cruelty, with the prosecution claiming that Nahkira's death was the criminal fault of her parents, as they had refused to allow their daughter to be treated with insulin, as it was against their religious beliefs. And when the case hit the media, it attracted nationwide publicity, and the parents of Nahkira and her 4 other siblings became victims of a hate campaign. People began shouting abuse at the family in the street, calling them murderers, and vigilantes began knocking on their doors and windows at all hours of the night, and their home was vandalized. Stones were thrown at their windows, and their windows were also smashed. The other children, Nahkira's siblings, became targets too, and people began threatening them. The eldest son, Nahkira's brother, was also knocked unconscious at school. And after being dragged through the media, Nahkira's mother, Beverly, decided to speak out and told a local media outlet that they had taken Nahkira to the doctors and hospital 6 times over 10 days, but had decided to resort to homeopathic remedies after staff at Queen's Medical Centre in Nottingham had turned their backs on them. Beverly told the local media, "People who know us feel very angry. People who don't know us are being led by the media, which has made us out to be terrible parents. We were charged with manslaughter and looked upon as murderers because we wanted to shield our daughter." The parents of Nahkira said that from the day of diagnosis till the day Nahkira fell ill into a coma, Nahkira didn't look seriously ill. She was well for a long time and taking homeopathic medicine 3 times a day. She had played with her friends, went shopping, and even helped at home with baking. She later came down with flu-like symptoms, which unbeknownst to her parents was a symptom of her diabetes. Nahkira's dad had told doctors that Nahkira had only become unwell the day she had slipped into a coma, after she had been given a piece of cake to eat that morning. The homeopathic medicine Nahkira had been taking was a homeopathic medicine called Zygium, a remedy popular in India but not as effective as insulin. This homeopathic medication unknown to Nahkira's parents, had only masked the symptoms of diabetes, making her appear to be well, as urine tests appeared normal, when in reality, Nahkira was dangerously ill. Dr. Christopher Hammond, the homeopathic doctor who had reasoned with the parents of Nahkira for almost 2 hours as she lay in his surgery in a comatose condition, was charged with serious professional misconduct by the General Medical Council. After a 2-day hearing, the GMC said that the doctor failed to take appropriate action to save Nahkira's life. During the General Medical Council hearing, Sir Robert asked the doctor why he had not thought of asking his wife, who was at the surgery at the time Nahkira was brought in, to talk to Nahkira's parents, whilst he, the doctor, put the child into his car, drove her to the hospital, and risked a charge of kidnapping. Dr. Christopher Hammond told them that he felt completely thrown by the situation that confronted him, and there was no obvious course of action open to him. He said, "Whatever course I followed carried risks. I was afraid they'd walk out my surgery the same way they'd walked out of the hospital." The General Medical Council said that the homeopathic doctor tried too long to try and build bridges between parents and hospital, and found him guilty of serious professional misconduct. Dr. Hammond said, "If I'd known what I knew at the end of them talking to me, that it was not a flat refusal to have insulin, I would have put it to them sooner." His doctor's license was now in question, and after the case, Dr. Hammond said, "I fully accept the decision of the committee and do not wish to elaborate on it. I would like to convey my deep sadness and regret to the Harris family on their tragic loss." The 4-week trial of Nahkira's parents began over a year later, in October of 1993, in Nottingham Crown Court, where the head teacher of Elms Primary School, where Nahkira attended, described Nahkira's father, Dwight, as an exemplary father who had been elected to the governing body and worked tirelessly to help the school, taking an interest in his children's progress. A martial arts instructor who had trained Nahkira and her siblings testified how well Nahkira had appeared in the days before she died. And the Harris' eldest son, Nahkira's brother, wrote a touching letter to the judge about his parents. Judge Justice Tucker said that he accepted that Nahkira's parents were both loving and caring parents, and in all other respects, Nahkira had been very well cared for and looked after. He went on to say, "This is not a case where you are guilty of any physical cruelty. It is a case where you allowed your own misguided views to stand in the way of your daughter receiving proper medical treatment." The judge described Dwight as a misguided zealot, and on Thursday the 23rd of October 1993, Dwight Harris was jailed for 30 months for the manslaughter of his daughter Nahkira. Nahkira's mother, Beverly, received a 2-year sentence, suspended for 18 months, as the judge said that he believed that Beverly had been subject to her husband's will. After his sentence was announced, Dwight leaned across and kissed his wife Beverly before leaving the dock. Following Nahkira's parents' sentencing, the friends and family of the couple held a candlelight vigil and a silent protest against the conviction of Nahkira's parents outside Nottingham's Queen Medical Centre when Nahkira had died. And Nottingham South MP Alan Simpson called for a public inquiry into the case, claiming there had been a series of failures of communication which had allowed the tragic death to occur. He said, "Whatever Mr. and Mrs. Harris did wrong, they and their daughter was let down by a number of public agencies with statutory powers which do not appear to have been carried out. From first hand, I know that the Harrises are people whose lives were centered around their children." New guidelines were issued to social workers after Nahkira's death. A confidential minutes of case conference revealed that community diabetic nurse Margaret Hoskin had said that when she'd been asked to find Nahkira and her parents after they left the hospital, tracing the Harris family was taking up a lot of time, and she did not think that it was her job to trace the family. She added that involving the police would be too confrontational, and the consultant, Dr. Derek Johnson, who had sent her to go and look for the family, agreed with her. Because of this, Nahkira's case was closed on the 6th of January 1992 by social services. Had the gravity of Nahkira's situation been fully assessed by social services, then this should and would have triggered a child protection investigation under Section 47 of the 1989 Children's Act. But this wasn't carried out, and social services were accused of departmental failure, and in 1994, legal action was taken against social services by Nahkira's parents, who say that social services was negligent when Nahkira was moved from the hospital. £700 was raised for the Harris Appeal Fund, which was set up to help pay the legal costs for the couple. Dwight and Beverly Harris appealed their sentences, but on Monday the 14th of November 1994, just over a year after being sentenced, the couple lost their appeal at the Court of Appeal, when Lord Justice Kennedy upheld their sentences, saying that the couple deliberately went against doctors' advice. After serving 15 months of a 30-month or 2.5-year sentence, Nahkira's father, Dwight Harris, was released from Ashwell Prison in Leicester on Friday the 3rd of February 1995. Nahkira's parents, Dwight and Beverly Harris, planned to sue Nottingham County Council as well as the health authorities over Nahkira's death.